Canadian quarterback Trey Ford has committed to playing for Edmonton after attending the Baltimore Ravens rookie minicamp and declining a similar invitation from the New York Giants. Could Chris Jones have convinced him with a chance to start at quarterback as a rookie for the Elks?
The timing of all this to me is very intriguing because we know how persuasive Jones can be. He got not only JT Barrett to sign a CFL contract, now Cardale Jones, after Barrett goes down with a season-ending injury in off-season training. I would like to look into the validity of that. But anyways, I want to focus on Ford because Ford declining the invitation to go to New York Giants rookie minicamp is somewhat surprising in the sense that you get that opportunity to get in front of NFL coaches and scouts. Doesn't come along too often. So I wonder if Jones has talked to Ford and said, look, we don't want you to get behind here in terms of learning the playbook, because we think that if you perform well, you could have a shot to be the starter. That to me has to at least be part of this conversation. And we heard Chris Jones in the offseason talk about JT Barrett and say that if he came in, played the best out of any quarterback there, that he would have been the starter. And Barrett, yes, was an NCAA star, but been out of pro football for a little bit and would have been a CFL rookie, just like Ford. Ford, you could argue, more athletic, I would say, than Barrett by a long shot. And yes, he did play U Sports, but let's throw that out of here, okay? Guys out of U Sports have shown that they can be productive in the CFL regardless of position. So I'm very curious to see how many first team reps potentially Ford earns and how quickly this goes, because Jones in a roundabout way likes to be a guy that is unique and different. And what would be more unique and different right now than starting not just a Canadian quarterback, but a rookie Canadian quarterback who has generational type athleticism? That says Chris Jones to me.
I want to start this by saying that I'm really high on Trey Ford, and I think he could be a great player in this league. That said, I think somebody needs to check Justin Dunk's residence for whatever Kool-Aid this man has been drinking. I don't know if it's poison control. I don't know if it's the DEA. I don't know what we got to send. There is no way Trey Ford is going to be the starting quarterback of the Edmonton Elks. Come on. I think Trey Ford could be a great quarterback in this league, but he needs time to learn. He needs time to develop. He needs time to adjust to the professional level, because this is not U Sports. I have tremendous respect for the U Sports game and that level of football, but the CFL and U Sports are not close. There is a significant jump that needs to be made. If anything, to me, moving JT Barrett to the retired list means that Chris Jones is just going to have to take the avenue that he always should have, to be quite frank. Start Nick Arbuckle, have Taylor Cornelius back him up, and then you can use Trey Ford as your number 3 quarterback and potentially have him do some gadget things. Have him run the Wildcat, have him play some unique spots in some very unique formations. We know that quarterbacks are allowed to be on the field at the same time now. 2 quarterbacks used to just be 1. And at the end of the day, the Elks are going to win games based on Chris Jones' defense. All they need is a quarterback who can go out, manage the game, and protect the football. To me, that does not scream U Sports rookie quarterback. To me, what that screams is a veteran like Nick Arbuckle, who's been in a number of different systems and has generally done a good job of protecting the ball.
I agree with you completely, Hodge. I don't necessarily think that there is a path to start right away for Trey Ford, as much as it hurts my heart to say that. But I do think that there is a plan to get him on the field early in those sort of package looks. I mean, Chris Jones hasn't Ferg as much. They're already designing plays on how they can utilize Trey Ford's unique athleticism. And the way he's designed that locker room this offseason has made it very clear that at the least they want an athletic number 3, if not an athletic starting quarterback. Now, from the Ford perspective, I think this is actually a pretty wise move. We know how difficult it is to catch on as a rookie minicamp invite. Obviously, you want to take advantage of opportunities to get in front of NFL scouts, but if you have a chance to play right away in some capacity in Edmonton, you've got to be in that rookie minicamp so you're not wasting reps or losing reps when there's so many other candidates in that room as well. You look at guys like Khalil Tate, who we haven't even talked about, who was a big time starter at Arizona. He's on that roster as well. And with the Elks, there's the added element in the fact that this is going to be the only team that has veteran quarterbacks in rookie minicamp. Because as we discussed earlier, the CFLPA has told every team in the league that the veteran quarterbacks aren't going to be there except Edmonton, because they're worried about retribution from Chris Jones and that team management if those quarterbacks don't show up. So there's opportunities for a guy to seize a job. That's why Taylor Cornelius and Nick Arbuckle are going to be there, and you cannot miss out on reps when it's an open opportunity like that.
Trey Ford's going to be there too. All right, let's go over a couple things. Arbuckle does make sense as the prudent guy to start the season, but this is the same guy. We've talked about it on the podcast. We heard it at the CFL Combine that the Elks have been trying to trade for the entire offseason. I don't care what Chris Jones has to say. He has nothing invested in Arbuckle, and people will say, well, yeah, I gave him a 6-figure signing bonus to redo his contract. That was a drawer in the deal from former GM Brock Sunderland, all right? What has Chris Jones invested in Trey Ford? A first-round pick. In fact, the first quarterback to be picked in the first round of the CFL draft since when, Mr. Hodge?
1980.
A long time, my man. That's over 40 freaking years. So I'm telling you, Jones likes this kind of stuff. Now, I'm obviously drinking the Kool-Aid and talking about him being a potential starter, but when you look at it, it's a new staff in there in Edmonton. Chris Jones and his boys. Yes, Arbuckle has been in that system in some form or fashion when he was in Toronto, but they're all starting from the ground floor here in terms of learning Stephen McAdoo's offense. And Hodge, you almost made my point for me earlier when you said Jones is going to win based on his defense. You just need a guy that can move the chains a little bit, have a high completion percentage on some throws that are schemed up for him and made easy. So I don't necessarily think that Ford out the gate is going to be the starter, but I think part of that conversation to get him there right away and learning the playbook was, hey, as you guys alluded to, we'll get you on the field early, and if you perform well, perhaps there's a chance for you to play more down the line. I also think it's a smart decision from Ford's perspective in terms of the NFL. Get in the pro game, show that you can potentially flourish in the CFL and do well with that athleticism. That will give the NFL scouts more tangible tape to evaluate. That was really the tricky part for the NFL scouts, was evaluating Trey Ford's film from the University of Waterloo, like it or not. And I have respect for the U Sports game, obviously played it, but it was very trickier for them to do so and put a finger on, all right, is this NCAA Division I, Division II, Division III? Is this JUCO? Like, what level is he playing at and who does he have around him? I think it's easier to do with some of the positions in the trenches, but they're trying to evaluate his athleticism and how it translates on the field. So I think from Ford's perspective, it's smart to come to the CFL, try to pick the offense up, show you can be productive. And then if you play really well, and we've seen some quarterbacks that we might not have thought that would have gotten a look in the NFL. Like I believe Cornelius this past offseason had a workout. I think it was with the Chicago Bears, if that comes to mind. So even a guy like that who does not have the athleticism as Ford, the NFL is looking for now, off a season that Edmonton had last year, got a workout with an NFL team. So Ford's productive. I think it's a prudent approach for him to get some CFL game tape to potentially get that shot in the NFL.
One thing that is key is that we do now have the re-implementation of the NFL window to consider, because of course, back under the old CBA, right? If you signed a 3-year deal in the CFL, then you were there for 3 years. Trey Ford essentially has a 3-year contract with Edmonton, but with an out each year to try the NFL. He can't try the NFL and come back to a different CFL team. If he's playing in the CFL, it's got to be as a member of the Edmonton Elks. But I do think that that is prudent, and that probably changes, right? If there's no NFL window, I think it's likely that Ford completely exhausts his NFL opportunities. Whereas now, given that he can essentially try it for the next 3 years, regardless of anything else, I think it's maybe a little bit different. Because you're right. I don't think that NFL scouts have any idea what to do with youth sports film. I think it confuses them, and it's not. And if it's not their wheelhouse, they're not going to touch it. Why? Because there's 700 million quarterbacks who could potentially play in the NFL based on wherever they played at all the different levels that you mentioned, Dunk, across the United States.